Hello, I'm just going to talk you guys through using Xnormal for doing low to high poly bakes. Xnormal is really cool and really quick and effective, much better than Max. So for example, let's create a box here and I'll just call this low poly, and I'll just clone it off as a copy, not an instance, not a reference, but a copy, and call it high poly. Right, now I'm just gonna, for the sake of this, choose the low poly, and then right click and just hide selected. So this is a high poly version. Whatever you do, don't move it, just work on it. So I'll press Q just to make sure I select it here and put an edit poly modifier on top. I'll just choose all the faces here and I'll just do bevel. I'm just going to choose some random number to bevel each face by. That's local normal. Somebody decides to bloody do it and that's not happening. Let's try extrude. It's not happening either. So what's going on? Bevel. It's working now. Let me just get the settings right for this and bring it in to there, something like that. By polygon, that's what I'm meant to do. Right, so I'll just keep that one there, choose them all, and then that's done that. I'll do it again. Bevel, and this time I'll change to there. Bevel, bring that out a bit. Bevel again. And okay, so we've got a funky looking shape. So imagine that's your bump detail. Could obviously go much more than that, but I'll do it. So that's our high poly, and we've got a low poly. So 2 seconds, and I'll be right back. So I've just opened Xnormal, and for now that's fine, it's open. So I've got my high poly model, and I'm just going to export selected. I'll just put this on the desktop as an OBJ file. High poly. Everything there is fine, just texture coordinates, normal, blah blah blah. Everything's, in fact, everything's not fine. The high poly doesn't matter about the UVs, but the low poly does, so I'll export the high poly one. But the low poly one, so if I just hide, I'll just unhide all and then hide selection, that brings the low poly one back. Now I'll have to do UVs for this, so just collapse to edit poly, add a UV unwrap, select all the faces, and mapping, flatten mapping. Right, that'll do. I've just flattened the mapping out. That's good enough. So with that, let's collapse to, bake those in, and export selected. So the low poly must have UVs. The high poly one basically just borrows or makes use of the low poly. Basically you don't even need anything for a high poly, it's just there for data, because it does a distance check between each face of the low poly and the high. Okay, so we'll save that as low poly, OBJ, that's fine, export that. Okay, so now Xnormal just wants to have the low definition mesh, So I kind of worked on it earlier. I'll just remove from list, remove that from list. Right, so low poly, choose your file, just do add meshes. Go to my desktop here, I'll find the low poly, okay, and high poly, add meshes. That's me just right clicking on that, and high poly. So low poly and high poly. Now what I have to do here is go to the tools and do a ray distance calculator, and just click go, and it will do some computing and it works out these numbers, and they kind of change, and again kind of let it kind of go a little bit until it stops changing. The 58005 is kind of what it's got there, which is fine. So I'll just go press stop and copy results, and it says values copied. So that's all you have to do there, is just that ray distance calculator, and then go to your baking options, make sure your normal map's checked. That's the size of your normal map there. I usually just leave that everything else as it is. Bucket size 64. If it's any different, you can change the size at, I think 16 or 32 is default. So ambient occlusion, you can bake that off as well, and a convexity map as well. If you just grab the red or blue channel from a convexity map and put it over your ambient occlusion, it will kind of crispy it up a bit. But for now I'll just turn convexity map off, and I'll just do a normal and an ambient occlusion. So I'll do generate maps. In fact, let me change these to 512, do it a bit quicker. Generate maps, file, blah blah blah. Oh, right, I'm just going to cancel those because it's trying to overwrite. It's trying to overwrite files, so I'll just change the location here to my desktop, and I'll just do test map. Generate maps. And there we go, it's done a normal map and it's done the ambient occlusion map. Perfect. So that's what we need. And go back into Max. Got a low poly version there. Open up some materials. Okay, so I have opened up the materials, and now let's go map hunting. The ambient occlusion I'll just put in diffuse, because basically that's what you do, you multiply it in with your colour. So I will just choose bitmap, and I'll go to my desktop. I shall find this map occlusion, and I'll apply that to the model, and there you can see it's perfecto to where the ambient occlusion should be. Now let's look at bump map, normal bump, let me choose bitmap and find that one. Okay, so that's applied as well. Might want to change the value here in a second, but I have to enable hardware display with maps, and that looks pretty decent. That's kind of the way it should look, like it's indented. Can raise the bump amount. There we go, change that to 100, you get full effect from it. And that's basically how you use Xnormal. It is bloody amazing how good it does these bakes. And all you need to do is make sure you get UVs for your low poly version. Your high poly, you don't need to worry about the UVs for that. This would be ideal for doing like columns, for example, or engravings, and anything quite simple. In fact, I've used it for pretty much everything so far, and it's really good. Now, another cool thing is Xnormal comes with plugins for Photoshop. So if you want to use a plugins for Photoshop, then fair enough, but it also, there's some cool tools in here like height to normal map. So let's say if I drag my ambient occlusion map in there, say convert to normal map, so well, they've changed this a little bit. change this a little bitty. I want to convert. How do I do it? Oh, I generate. Right click and click generate, and it creates like a normal map from a height map, which is okay, but you get these edges where there's contrast sometimes and you don't really want that. You can mess around here, like I always change Y to minus, generate again, and it gives you a rough normal map, but it's nowhere near as good as, you know, that one. That's a proper normal map. So that's not really a normal map there, that's just a contrast based map. But if you go into your, once you've installed Xnormal, you go into your C drive and look for Santiago Orgaz. That's the guy that created Xnormal, and you can contact this guy if there's any features that you want to add to Xnormal that you'd like to see within reason. Then you can speak to this guy. Now there is some plugins. It's under Java. It's not Java plugins. You have to get an x86 if you're using the 32-bit machine, and x64 if you're using a 64-bit machine. And there's a folder called Photoshop plugins. And basically you just grab these, copy them, and then go looking for your Photoshop folder. So that'll be under your program files, Adobe, Photoshop, no, Adobe, no, bloody hell, where is Photoshop? Let me go back, maybe it's in here, Adobe, Photoshop 64-bit, plugins, and you just paste them here. See, I've done it already, but you paste them there and then you restart Photoshop, and what you get is you get some extra filters. So let me just make a quick map. 256. It's filled with white, that's fine. Turn off this animation thing, change that to whatever, Control 0, full screen, and I usually like to give it like the mid-grey value. So you want to give it a mid-grey value, you want to give it 127 or 128, whatever, it's only one bit away. So now if you draw in black, it'll draw in the way. Just change that to 80, and if you draw in white, it'll draw out the way. Right, so that's a height map, grayscale height map. Now if you go to filter, Xnormal, you can do height to normals here, and basically it's similar to the NVIDIA one, but this is much better in my mind. Now you have to flip the Y, so you have to go to Y minus, and it remembers it usually. That's if you're using it for UDK or 3ds Max to preview it. That's all you have to change. You can change the smoothing amount, like if you go 0 and press update, it's like really harsh. And it does it in these increments that are quite cool. So I usually like 0.15, and you can change the samples as well for a slightly better finish, but 4 samples is fine as well. Continue, and that's you got a normal map. Now this is great if you want to mix normal maps together. What you would do is you have your original normal map there, and we create another grayscale top of it. We want to add some funky detail. Let's actually drag out this and fill it with a pattern. So what we do, pattern. Okay, now let's go for this here. The problem there is I can't can't really scale the pattern, so I'll add pattern via this. I can scale it down. Let's go for 5. Okay. Yeah, I'll just change that into a multiply, and that'll affect the grayscale, and I'll change the opacity a little bit. Right, so I'll just merge visible. That's me got that, and I'll do. In fact, undo that. I will work on that. Open that. Shift I and delete or fill with black. Fill with black. Okay, so let's say that's an area that you want to create a pattern in. Bring that up again. Merge visible. And there's our original normal map, whatever it could be. Just now it's like some party streams or whatever, and we want to add this. So we X normal, height to normal there. We get that nice normal map. That's fine. Continue with that. And we want to mix these together. Now you want to do an overlay, but it kind of washes out this one a little bit. So you have to, whilst on your new layer, go to adjustments, levels, and choose the blue channel and bring this 255 to 127. Now it should grey out a little bit like that, but now it's not washing things out with blue, and that's how you combine normal maps. So you could create like a pattern within a certain area. So you just merge those, and that's you got your normal map. Okay, so those methods, using Photoshop through the plugins is really cool. I use that a fair amount, and sometimes I will use, in fact I don't really use the Xnormal one anymore, the one that you've seen me do where I just dragged in a grayscale and got height from it, because you can use Photoshop much easier. But just make sure you load in your low def mesh with the UV. So that's that there, and your high def mesh. Go to your tools, do the ray distance calculator, and that will basically use the two objects that you've loaded in. Hit go. Starts to work out a value here. There's that 58005 again, and it's kind of slowed down now. It's stopped calculating. So you could just press stop, copy results, close that, and then generate maps. But go to your baking options first, because you can choose to generate all kinds of maps. Convexity map, that's the other thing I was talking about. So I'll just create this convexity map, show you what I'm talking about. Generate maps, and you get this purple looking thing. If I get into Photoshop and I drag in ambient occlusion, and I drag in this guy as well. Okay, I'll just set that in place. I've got the channels here. It's got a red, green and blue channel. Now I'll just choose the red channel, copy it, go back to my layers. I'll just bin that layer completely and paste in the red channel. Now for some reason it's moved, because Photoshop is bloody stupid, and it should know that I want it exactly over it. So for the sake of this, whatever's, but I want to multiply here, and you can see it's just enhancing the darker areas. Now it's not lined up exactly, so I'll just do it manually. Right, and there you go, it would enhance darker areas for the ambient occlusion. So merge those together, and you save that, test occlusion, okay, and open up max, okay, and I think it's already reloaded the maps, but if you click on materials it tends to reload them anyway. So that's really it. So I can mess about colour, see if I can give it some colour here. And move that into a specular level, and copy, and you can see now it's looking proper, three-dimensional, but it's really flat. So just to prove it, there you go, attach edge verts here, and there you have it. So I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and use Xnormal by all means. It's really useful. And goodbye render texture, because you suck. Okay, catch you guys later. Bye.